Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'm going to return to what is going to be a stunningly important topic as we anticipate the next, and maybe the last UK general election. The cooperation that is needed between different parties in the country opposed to the Conservatives, and the even more cooperation that is needed by the rest of us to rescue a pretty dire situation. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So we've had quite a lot of by-elections this year, mostly council seats which don't get a lot of attention, but there have been Westminster seats up for grabs. There are a few more coming up in the next few weeks as well. But of the seats contested so far this year, it's been a bit of a mixed bag. There have been examples of local party cooperation that have cost the Conservatives some seats. There have also been cases where local parties have not worked together in this vein and the Conservative candidate has won. You know, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davies, recently said that he is focusing resources on the North Shropshire seat. So that's a Westminster by-election coming up, vacated by the disgraced Owen Paterson. But that his party would be leaving the by-election in Old Bexley and Sidcup to Labour. Essentially what he's alluding to is not a formal pact, but it's an understanding that the two parties would be helping themselves by helping each other. So why don't Starmer and Davey just agree a full-on formal electoral pact that they can shout from the hilltops? Well, so who's being difficult? Is it Starmer refusing? No. Neither leader can really do this. But before I explain the issues, let's look at why so many people, many of whom you would think should really know better, are forcefully calling for a formal pact. I'm not going to deny that I have done so very recently myself as well. The reason is quite simple. The Conservatives will not win anywhere near enough votes to win majority power in Parliament unless their opponents split the anti-Tory vote. The Conservatives profit from other parties taking votes off each other. Now, there is an interesting challenge to the Conservatives in the form of Reform UK, which is what the Brexit Party became, but that's another issue and one that I don't have enough information on. But for now, let's go with the standard political reality in Britain, that the Conservatives take the right-wing vote unopposed and nick a load of centrist votes. Several other parties share the left-wing vote and also fight amongst themselves and the Conservatives over centrist votes. If we engineered a pseudo two-party system, then the Conservatives would lose power. If we only presented the electorate with a choice of two main party candidates in each constituency, then an alliance would win enough seats to form a majority. Or so the thinking goes. Now I'm going to counter that in a moment. And it's not that the thinking is wrong as such, it's just that the route to it is. You know, but for now, that is the reasoning behind calls for the party leaders to declare a formal alliance. And you can see how it is as well. Yes, there would be people who would vote Labour but wouldn't vote Lib Dem. And if Labour candidates stood down, they just wouldn't vote at all. We get that, or they'd vote for a smaller independent or something. Yes. But a lot of them would switch the Lib Dems, especially if it was explained to them, we're trying to get rid of the Tories here. And the stakes are very high. Like I talked on Friday about how my priorities in just a few years have switched from wanting a Labour government to wanting Brexit stopped to wanting the Tories out to being actually in fear that the UK could genuinely become a full-on dictatorship. You know, the stakes have been raised as high now as I think it's possible for a country's stakes to rise. It's like, how could you actually further ramp up the severity of the consequences for failure at this point? So, of course, people are pissed off that Starmer and Davey don't declare this an alliance when it would deal with the issue. Anything less is a risk. However, there are things that need to be understood as well, and it's not up to either Starmer or Davey to do what these people are asking. Like, I'll talk about the Labour Party because I know about the structures, but the same will largely apply to the Liberal Democrats as well. Labour is not this huge organisation where Keir Starmer is the CEO of a large group of nationwide activists. The people who campaign for Labour in each constituency around the country are not Labour employees under Starmer's orders. They are party members who volunteer their time and will direct their campaign according to their collective wishes. They decide how they're going to deal with the issue locally themselves. Yes, if it's a target seat, then come general election time, the national leadership will also send in their people to coordinate local efforts, and a load of resources will be thrown at it. But by and large, most of the CLPs are just doing their own thing. And it also goes without saying that although all volunteers are well-meaning, and I never fail to appreciate their efforts, they don't always have the acumen to go with it. Like, there are some very active people in the party, unintentionally, don't actually do the party's fortunes any favours at all. So Starmer can't just tell these people to stand down candidates. And, you know, if you wouldn't mind campaigning for the Lib Dems in a constituency where Labour can't win but the Lib Dems can, it would be great if he could, but he can't. So why can't we just explain to those activists how, if they do, Labour will actually get into government? This is the route to getting Labour into government, you know, albeit needing an alliance. The reason is because they won't believe it. In 2010, the Lib Dems entered a coalition with the Conservatives and they acted as handmaidens to Tory austerity. Now, I know things have changed. I know that the Lib Dems would not prop up a minority Conservative government this time. In the far future, maybe again, but not this time. Under these circumstances, it's not happening. But many Labour activists do not share that view. They think the Lib Dems would jump straight into bed with the Tories and that their tactical voting would just enable another Tory Lib Dem coalition. Now, I would still say that that is better than what we have now, but it isn't what would actually happen. But it doesn't matter. That's the perception. Now, there are some parts of the country where the active Labour members will be pragmatic, and we will see that local cooperation towards helping out tactical voting. But there will be other parts where you won't. There's nothing Starmer can do about that because he is not the boss of Labour members. He could change the rules at conference to try and allow him to stand down candidates by changing the constitution. But given that he didn't do this year, when I hoped he would, you know, when it could well be the last conference before the next election, I'm guessing he didn't have enough support to do so. It may be he genuinely didn't want to do it, but it could also just be there wouldn't have been the support. Like, he'd probably on reflection be right as well, maybe, because not only it would need massive support from the very local Labour, the parties that would be overruled by such change. Remember, you'd be asking Labour members to vote for something that overrules them, but it would also need some significant union support as well. Probably not happening. Then there's the Liberal Democrats. Now, being realistic, in purely pragmatic terms, we don't actually need a lot of Labour members to help the Lib Dems much. Because in order for a working electoral pact, let's be honest, we're mostly talking about Lib Dems standing aside for Labour. You know, there are only so many seats where it's helpful for Labour to stand aside for the Lib Dems. There are some seats, and it is helping our cause if they did it, but there's only a relatively small number. So should we forget about blinkered Labour activists and work on Lib Dems around the country to act unilaterally if necessary to boost Labour's chances? After all, it's not like Labour can win a majority. They'd still need to include the Lib Dems in the following parliamentary alliance. It's still a win for the Lib Dems. Well, I'm not a Lib Dem, so I don't have my finger on the pulse, but it is entirely possible that there exists the same mistrust of Labour in the party as there is of the Lib Dems in the Labour Party. Plus, you have the situation where, to maximise chances, you're asking a handful of Labour candidates to put their feet up or stand down altogether, but dozens of Lib Dem candidates. The sacrifice, if we can call it that, when, you know, any candidate asked to step aside has no chance anyway. It's not much of a sacrifice. But the sacrifice, such as it is, for the Lib Dems is way greater than for Labour. And in party political terms, the rewards are fewer as well. Like, even if it all worked, even if an electoral pact worked, and we maximised the number of seats we took off the Tories, the Liberal Democrats would still be the fourth largest party in Westminster. That's only going to give them limited clout. So you'd be asking the Liberal Democrats to sit out the elections in large parts of the country in return for not a lot of influence for having made the biggest effort. It would be more influence than they have now. Of course, seeing the bigger picture, and if you could treat these political parties as a single entity with a single mind, it would be easy to get them to do that because you could sit down and explain it to them. But that's not the situation. We're talking about thousands of people across the country, who are all involved in politics for very different reasons. Not all of them are fully committed to their party getting the best possible outcome in an election even. Not all of them are even bothered about who forms the national government. They're more interested in either local matters or in using their political party as a talking shop to moan about the ills of the world. Political activism is not a meritocracy. The people who do most of the work and have most of the influence at local level and decide these things are not the best debaters or the sharpest political minds. They are the people who had the time to actually dedicate it to the task. A lot of people with a full-time job and family and things like that really don't have much time to dedicate to the local party effort. You're not going to sit on the executive committee because you haven't got time. You may be able to help out, deliver a few leaflets now and then. That's about it. So yes, we need parties to work together. I'd feel a lot more comfortable if it were a stronger pact than just, look, we'll pump our resources into these seats and you leave us alone there. And you do the same for us. And then that's the best way to get the best outcome for both of us. That's better than nothing. But as I said earlier, the stakes are really high. I don't want to leave any stone unturned. But it's no use people just shouting for party leaders to do a thing that's not actually within their power to do. If you want a full-on electoral pact, I would like one, you need to go around every single Labour and Liberal Democrat local party group and all the active people in that group in all of the target seats, which is probably 150 seats around the country, and persuade all of them individually to act pragmatically and set aside their mistrust of each other. Now, if people want to do that, that'd be great. Good luck with it. But that is what would have to be done. Thinking that you just have to persuade one guy at the head of each party is misdirected and, frankly, a little lazy. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.